I am sitting with Roddy Bottum in the Dopey studio. Welcome to the show, Roddy.
Thank you so much, David. I'm really, really excited to be here. I hadn't heard of your program before I signed on. And then I did, and I went and listened to some Dopey episodes, and I love it so much.
What did you listen to?
Well, the last one I listened to was Johnny Knox, I believe is his name. Johnny, what's his last name?
Oh, Johnny Mac.
Johnny Mac, yeah. Him. I loved him. He was really great. He squeezed a bunch out.
Yeah, he squeezed them off.
He squeezed them off.
He squeezed them off.
That's what he says. I love like an old sober voice like that is kind of my favorite. But more than anything, I love the genre of not as much, well, recovery also, but I love the genre of the damage of drugs. It's so intense and exciting to me. It's my favorite flavor of all. Like people fucked up on drugs.
Me too.
It's fascinating. And why is that?
I think it has to do with a lot of things, but this is a great question. I think it's the excitement because it's so exciting. It's so science fiction. You take this thing and you're changed. Right. And then the stakes.
That's for me, the stakes. Yeah. The stakes are so high. Like at any given point, someone's going to die. And that's why it's exciting to me, I think, mostly. Sci-fi, I kind of get that too. Like the whole concoction of like mixing stuff and putting it in a body is insane to me. But it's always been like fascinating to me.
But using, you see, in thinking about it, I don't think about the science fiction of it. It was using, actually putting something into me and being way different afterwards was such a crazy thing.
Right.
Because if you don't use drugs,
right,
like coffee's not going to change you that much.
Right.
Melatonin's not going to change you that much. This fake mushroom coffee, whatever they give you, that shit. Yeah. But if you take real drugs, it's going to change you.
Yeah. And it's so wild, like especially like when I first came onto like the notion of like getting high or what that was in people's lives as a child. It's crazy, scary, and fascinating. Like I remember as a kid, like seeing my parents at the cocktail party, whatever, getting drunk. And it was like, oh my God, like how their behavior would change. And it was so scary. Like I remember like going in another room, like far away, like practically in a closet, like shutting the door and like being scared. And then it turned into like when I heard about drugs, it was like for some reason we had like a record that we got from the library that was Bill Cosby talking about like drugs and how drugs were like dangerous and bad for you. And like hearing that, I'm like, oh my God, I was just like riveted. And then, of course, the motherlode of all drug books, Go Ask Alice. Did you ever have that?
I never
book?
read Go Ask Alice.
Oh my God, it's so good. Like we had that when we were super young. It's kind of, it's like written in the form of a diary. Do you know what it is?
I know of it, but I don't know it.
It's written in the form of a diary, but like the word is, which we found out later, was that there's no such person as Alice. Like it was just written by like kind of a right wing, or not right wing, but whatever. Like recovery people wrote it as a lesson to like, this is what happens if you start doing drugs. But it's told in diary form. And it's this girl and she's writing like from a really young age. She's never tried drugs and she gets into drugs and she eventually dies. But wow, that just shook our world as children.
I didn't even know that was what it was about.
Yeah, it's so good. She's like, she starts out like, it's so riveting. Like when she's a teenager, she goes to a party, and one of the first parties she goes to in a new town that she's moved to, she's feeling insecure. She has no friends, and she goes to this party, and these cool kids are like, hey, button, who's got the button? It's like, what? Like reading that as a kid was already like, what the fuck?
Is the button peyote?
The button is no, it's acid in one of the Coca-Colas that they shared to all the kids at the party. Like, I think like maybe a couple kids didn't get acid in the Coke, but like most of them did. So the button was referring to the Coke that had the acid in it. And Alice got, a Coke with acid in it. And that was her first like drug trip.
What was your first, did you read the book before you did drugs or afterwards?
Yeah, for sure. Like I was scared, but also intrigued. But like compared to like, it all just depends. Like my older sister, Elizabeth, she's never done drugs ever. One time we made her do hash oil when we were like older, but basically we forced her to do it. But it scared her off for good. And I blame that Bill Cosby record. Like she heard that
on her not
doing drugs. Yeah. She was spooked for good.
But you also like ascribe your own drug using to the record.
Yeah. I was spooked. That's what I'm saying. I was spooked, but also intrigued. I wanted it.
Right. And you grew up in Southern California and wound up moving up to San Francisco.
Yeah.
I never did hash oil. You describe hash oil so beautifully. I didn't introduce you nicely. This is Roddy Bottum, and it's a joy to sit across the table from you, to meet you. Roddy played keyboards in the incredible band Faith No More. He played guitar and sang in the incredible band Imperial Teen. He did an opera in New York City called Sasquatch. He is an artist. He's a movie scorer, and he wrote a book, and it's called The Royal We. And it's a beautiful book that I just finished reading. I actually, to be honest with you, I'm not a great reader,
right?
So I use this app called Speechify, and Speechify reads the book to me, and it reads the book to me in Snoop Dogg's voice.
Wow.
So I read your story in AI Snoop Dogg's voice, which I'll play for you. It's amazing.
That's wild. So you could choose anyone's voice to read my memoir?
No. It just gives you like weird, like generic people or Snoop Dogg.
Do you think that's endorsed by Snoop Dogg?
Yes.
Does he you can use my likelihood and the likelihood of my voice? That's wild. Can you just tell me, I don't want to get too distracted, but just a couple of the other choices that you would have had to read Speechify?
Here, let's look at it. Let's look at it for a second. Speechify fucking...
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger?
No, there's no other famous people. It's just Snoop Dogg.
I'm trying to think who might be my dreamy go-to. I think John Malkovich would be a really good voice choice.
I wanted to play you this bit, like it's like chapter 7 or something, and when Snoop reads it, it's amazing. I didn't prep it though. Hold on, let me get to it so you could hear it, because I think you'll get a kick out of it. Let's see. Okay, hold on. Chapters. All right, hold on. How do we get back fast?
It's kind of a really unlikely pairing, me and Snoop Dogg. But remember when he first did stuff with Martha Stewart, we were all like, what? And then like, oh my God, yeah, that makes so much sense. Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart.
You're both West Coast OGs though.
Yeah.
You got that going for you.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me get this. I think you'll get a kick out of this. Which is the chapter that starts with the drugs, the drugs, the drugs, the drugs?
No idea. I should know. It's funny because I just finished
recording the audiobook.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Yesterday. David, it was so intense. I can't even tell you.
Tell me.
I had no idea it would be like that. Like I thought it would be kind of walk in the park. First of all, I love the sound of my voice. I'm really full of myself in that way.
You have a beautiful voice.
Thank you. Not so much singing. I mean, I can sing okay.
You have a great singing voice too.
Thank you for saying that. But like, I'm really confident with the way that I read particularly. Like I'm a really good reader and I'm aware of that. And I like that about what I can bring to the table. But I thought it would be a real walk in the park. Like I get to the studio and I just like, yeah, what could be easier than reading the words that I've already written? It would be a piece of cake. And the exercise, I guess, was easy, but it was so intense. I can't even I will walk out of that studio and I'm just like, I can't see straight. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. I got no energy. Today I feel a little bit better, but it took 4 days to read the book, which is a long time. And the intensity of having to focus that sharply on what you're saying and telling stories and emoting, I guess, but coupled with, those are my words and they're really intense stories. And like we were talking about before, the stakes of what's happened in my life and what I wrote about are pretty high. So it's these intense passages that I was kind of reliving. It felt a little cheesy at parts because I was like crying
while you were doing it.
Yeah, it was so intense. Poor Kyle, that man in the studio helping me was just, I mean, not poor Kyle. He was just like very sympathetic and just like, you okay? Everything good?
Did you cry on the track? Like, can you hear you crying when I get the audiobook?
I think maybe so.
I'm
not
sure you read it better than Snoop. Do you want to hear Snoop reading it for a second?
Absolutely,
Here.
I do.
Take it. Here, take it in your hand.
I became an expert at lying and keeping things from people. I learned to carry books with a straight arm down at my side, not held up to my chest. Fingernails I learned to showcase with a closed fist rather than fingers laid out like a lady. It was home. I'd grown up with 3 sisters and my mother, and I had a special relationship.
Right?
Do you remember the first time?
Pretty great.
Now I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. Yeah. And over this summer, I went nuts listening to some rock and roll audiobooks. I listened to the Elton John book.
Oh, right.
He starts recording it, but I think he couldn't handle it. And he got the actor that played him in the movie to record it.
Oh, right.
And then I listened to the Pete Townsend book.
Oh, wow.
And he read the whole thing. Right. And you feel him getting tired. You also feel him laughing at himself. Right. Because it's his story.
Sure.
And did you find yourself like, because you do have this is the first time we've met in person or spoken, and you have a very methodical way of talking, which I think is great. And I bet it's amazing for the audiobook. Did you feel like, did you laugh at yourself? It sounds like you cried because it was intense. There's a lot of heartache in the book.
Yeah.
What was the process like when you recorded it?
I think the takeaway was like mostly the hardships. I think the easy stuff or like the fun loving or like the fun stories were just kind of joyful and fun to get through. But even those were exhausting. I think the takeaway was just like, I had no idea. I was just like so overwhelmed by the emotion of it. And it really just got to me. And I was like, it took me to a place where like, is this what actors do? I guess so. I went and saw Oh Mary again last night, which I've seen a couple times. Have you seen that play?
No.
Oh my God, David, you got to see it. It's so fun. But Jinx Monsoon is the actress in Oh Mary right now. And I saw that and like her performance was so intense. And it felt like that. Like when I was reading my book, I was like that. Like, oh, this is what a theater person goes through every night. Like in real time, but also in front of an audience. That intensity and like sharing yourself on stage and throwing yourself into it. It was that. But then also I was like, no, but also I am like reading my story and my words and what happened. And it's the first book I've written too. So there's an air of that. Like it's really intense, like the first time sharing this. And also the vulnerability of like the stuff I talk about in the book. No spoilers, viewers, but it's really intense. Like I'd never shared stuff like that with people before. Like as a kid, I was super sexually promiscuous and like, a real slut. I was like a crazy child, like a rabid monkey of a child sex-wise. And I kept that a secret like for so long and didn't tell people that. So really never told people these stories. Like even my sisters who I'm so close to, like I'd never shared with them like what I was doing when we were all kids, which is basically, I would go to parks and have sex with guys in the bushes or like, behavior like that, which maybe as a straight person, it's like a little more shocking. Like gay people, that's what gay men do. And I talk about that in the book, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it was a reveal for me, and it was like very vulnerable, and that came into the mix too. Like sharing that for the first time was really intense.
As a straight man, whenever I read or hear about gay men cruising and gay sex and the phenomenon of being a slut, it's very exciting to me. Right. Like I think it's what straight men want in their life anyway.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's stupid for me to say, right. But like one of my best friends is very gay and he's on the show all the time. And he used to talk about cruising in Manhattan and what to cruise was like. And he said that's totally changed now with these apps. What was cruising like as a kid in Los Angeles?
Yeah. I talk about it a lot in the book, but like from where I was coming from, like it was an era in which I was like not open about my sexuality. So everything I did was cloaked in this crazy veil of secrecy. Like no one knew that I was gay. And so I would just go out on these adventures by myself and seek out sex. And it's a weird sort of concept, but it's really like, I mean, gay people know, the gay men know this. Like when you see cruising out, covert cruising in these arenas, like in a park or in a department store, you know, a bathroom on the fourth floor of a department store, wherever it is, these places exist and they're really covert and they're really hush hush and super discreet. But as gay kids, you see it and it's like right away, like bing, oh, there it is. You see it and you recognize it for whatever reason. Like that's just what happens. So like I talk about it in the book. Like I would go up into the Hollywood Hills with my friends when we were like little stoner kids. And I was young, I was 13 or 14, and we would ride our bikes up into the hills and smoke pot and sort of just hike around and stuff. But up there, like in Hollywood, of course, there's lots of like cruising spots where like gay men would go and have sex in the bushes. But I remember being up in those spots with my friends and seeing those spots. And like I could clock the rest of my friends who were straight didn't really acknowledge it, didn't really see what I saw. But me as a young gay kid, I was like, oh, got it. And, you know, we went home and I went back there as quickly as I could just to sort of get in on that action.
It's funny. You describe it in the book also, how similar that is to being a drug addict. And when you know it's there, not everybody else knows. And you're like, okay, this is where I have to be to get what I want.
Right.
And I can relate to that. And I think there's something like when we talked in the beginning about the excitement of doing these things if they're drugs and the stakes. It's also just shared experience by these little pockets of people. And I think, I mean, not as a gay person, but just hearing the way you wrote about it, it's so good the way you describe it and so intense. And there's so much passion in being in this secret society.
Yeah. Yeah. Which kind of like that sort of refers back to what we were talking about initially. It's like the secret society of doing these secret things that like, you know, it's like kind of magical, you know, when you first discover drugs or first discover, for me, discovering those places where to have sex. Yeah, it was like, oh my God, a whole new world, you know, unearthed itself. And it's like, oh, wow. And especially at that age and being impressionable and sort of like, especially like puberty age, you know, like your whole world is changing. It was like, yeah.
And you're coming out. When did you come out publicly, or not until you're in San Francisco and it's just kind of understood?
I was in San Francisco and like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense. And I talk about this in the book a lot. Like I was like living as an adult in San Francisco, the gayest city in all of the planet, where who would give a fuck if you're gay? But still, I wasn't open about it at that point. I think on some level, I was like I grew up in LA, and I think I always, as a kid, I fought convention really hard. And in a funny way, that was like almost conventional to me to like be in San Francisco and be this kid and be gay. I don't know. It was just too easy or something. I mean, I'm not going to deny that it was a little bit chicken shit of me not to sort of like be able to step up to the plate and declare my homosexuality at some stage. But for whatever reason, like I kind of walk away with it. Like I walk away from it like, you know, just kind of being good and forgiving myself and sort of like it is what it is. But yeah, I lived in San Francisco for a lot of years, like having covert sex. And I had a boyfriend for a long time. And yeah, I wasn't open about it until like it comes up in the book in a crazy way. But like at some point, like it all got to be a little bit too much. And it turned into more of a like I've got to share my being gay with the rest of the world as sort of a lesson or a sort of a do it for the rest of the world in addition to doing it for myself as a sort of like, hey, there's this guy, he's in a hard rock band in this crazy, like, pretty much misogynistic, like toxic male environment, but this guy's gay. So, the world isn't really quite what you think it is. So that's why I kind of went with it when I did, like, finally, I think I talked, I did, I know I did. I talked to this guy, Lance Loud, and we did an interview for The Advocate. And that was sort of a declaration and me sort of coming to terms with my role as being gay and what it meant to me, but also, to other people.
Totally. And Faith No More was just such a giant, it was a giant band, but it was such a weird band. And it came out of such a really, really weird place. And you were, and I mean this with love, you were a weirdo since you were a kid.
Yeah.
And I've always loved weirdos and I'm a weirdo as well. So when you're a teenager, what are you listening to and what are you kind of imagining for yourself before you even move there?
I played a lot of piano when I was a kid. So I started there in terms of like music. And I treated piano really seriously as a kid. And I practiced a lot. Like 2 hours a day, I would get up in the morning and I would play piano. And then I'd come home from school and I'd play piano. So it was kind of all about that for a long time for me. Music was. Until I started smoking pot, basically, and I got to an age like probably 14, 15 when I started smoking pot. And then I started sort of looking at, I guess rock music. And then I lived in Los Angeles up until like 1981. So I got to see like really early fun punk rock bands like X and the Plugs and like the Go-Go's when they started and like, that was kind of everything. That was a really shocking chapter of music when I was a kid and sort of struck me as like, especially as a kid growing up in Los Angeles, like everything was so cookie cutter in a way. And everybody was so like uniform basically and just kind of wants to be like everybody else. There's this air of Los Angeles that was prevalent when I was there. But then all of a sudden like punk rock happened and it was like, oh my God, what's this? It was like, outrageous people, who looked weird and like didn't give a fuck and were like loud and obnoxious and like doing something completely different. I was like, okay, that's it. That's where it is.
And you didn't take the dive into fucking heroin addiction. Like the scene is smattered with crazy drug abuse in all aspects of that scene.
Sure, yeah.
But still, you didn't succumb to that. Were you just a stoner when you were young?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know why I didn't get into heavier drugs earlier.
It's good.
It's a real missed opportunity.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to say that. But, it is like, it's funny. Like, yeah, I smoked pot a lot. And then when I moved to San Francisco, we did, like when the band started, we were real freaky kids, 3 of us who started the band. And we would take like MDMA or MDA, I think it was called then, or like, but like weird, like psychedelic, kind of like we would take mushrooms or like acid or weed, maybe once in a while, like speed, but never cocaine. And heroin was really always part of the mix, but I didn't get into heroin until later. I think like later, like honestly, like pre-grunge or like right around the time grunge kind of starts. I say in the book, it was almost like, like heroin hired a PR firm because all of a sudden it was like, oh, wow, heroin is so cool. Like model, like heroin, like chic heroin models are like, like the coolest, like musicians were doing heroin.
And it showed up in all the movies and all the models and this style.
Yeah.
But again, I think it was a backlash, just the way LA punk rock was a backlash against LA cookie cutter TV movies.
Right.
The idea, heroin was a backlash to everything else around it, I think. Not to mention it makes you feel really good.
Yeah. But also it's so intense, like just the word, like I said it, like when I was doing that audiobook the past couple of days, like every time I say the word heroin, it's just so laden with just like, oh, it's so heavy, you know, like talk about high stakes. It's like, it just like reeks of like, you know, the potential like death or like there's blood and I don't know what it is, but like just saying heroin is so intense. And it had that allure to me back then, like not in a really like, I wasn't attracted to it at first, but it was definitely something I was scared of, you know? And for me, like those things I'm repulsed by or scared of, I find I'm initially like that way, but eventually like I want it.
It's I mean, I don't know why I don't know why I'm going to tell you this. It's not necessarily worth anything. When I was a kid, I had a job on this street as a babysitter, and I babysat the building over there, some kid's apartment. And I put the kid to bed, and I stayed up late, and I watched there was a movie about the Beach Boys called like American Summer or something. And it was like in the 80s, and it came out.
Was it a TV movie or
Yeah.
a movie?
It was a TV movie.
I have a recollection.
And they cross paths with Charles Manson.
Sure, yeah.
And somebody mentions Charlie's on heroin in the movie. And I remember like, I felt like I got electrocuted when I heard that. And I'm 15 and I'm not even doing drugs or anything.
But did you know who Charlie Manson was at the time?
Maybe.
Right.
But it was that idea of this dark, all-powerful, transformational thing that I knew something about, but not much about. And it hit me just the way you're describing it.
Yeah.
And you're in your 20s in San Francisco, you know heroin is very pervasive in music.
Sure.
But let me ask you real quick though. When you were growing up, were you just playing classical piano for the most part?
Yeah.
As a kid?
All classical.
And your mother was the great force behind your music as a kid.
Yeah, she was a real collaborator. Like she was a real piano person. She had perfect pitch. And
I just want to give a shout out to your mother in this thing.
Yeah, thank you. That's really sweet. My mom was such a nut. I talk about her in the book too. She was like, even until like the point she died like 5 years ago, but even up till then, she would go to the LA prison every Sunday and play piano for the prisoners' mass every Sunday.
Amazing.
That was her thing.
And and she would say, "Peace be unto you."
Yeah.
Which really struck me when I read it in the book.
Yeah.
Because like that's such a crazy person to be, the person who's offering peace to somebody else. And it's very aspirational. And it's for some reason I'm not that person, but I would like to be.
Right.
And it was inspiring to hear that about your mom in the book.
Right.
Did you feel like, and this is just a random thing, did you feel aspirational to be like that at all at this point?
To be like that, like peace be with you, like that?
Yeah.
I think so. I think that's in me. I think I'm that kind of a person, honestly. Like I'm not super wicked or mean. And I, you know,
That's good.
I do like, I like to lead with a pretty open heart. You know, I really like to meet people and I like to engage in, I want to say, a healthy way. So, yeah.
Tell me about the beginning of Faith No More in San Francisco. Like, what's the scene like? And the band was much different from the band that we got to hear as kids.
Right. It was. I moved up to San Francisco at the same time as my best friend was Billy, who played bass in Faith No More. And we both moved up there at the same time. And it was sort of like punk rock had happened. And there was kind of this new sort of like flavor coming into the mix that was really dark. It was kind of like goth. We would look at it now as goth, like Alien Sex Fiend or Sisters of Mercy. Or there were a lot of like San Francisco bands like Flipper. There was a band called Toiling Midgets. There was a band called B-Team. But all of these bands were a little bit older than us and sort of led with a real dark sort of presentation. It was real moody. It was a little slower than punk rock. And it was very indicative of San Francisco. Like LA didn't really offer that so much. But San Francisco was like kind of rainy and spooky, and like that was sort of the backdrop, coupled with this weird sort of sense of sort of like still like this clash between what had been, which was like hippie culture, and like jam out like cheese rock, whatever that means. Not necessarily cheese, I shouldn't say that, but like there was a definite clash between what had been there before and what was coming up, which were
San Francisco was the flag was planted by these incredible hippie bands that got subverted to become cheesier as time went on. But the initial planting of the flag is very pure, and that's why it's still echoing to this day there.
For sure. Like that planting of the flag still was a thing that people did. And we planted flags as sort of, as like musicians, as bands. But there was always a sense of sort of provocation in that way and sort of challenging what had come before. So even us, as we started the band, we were in the backdrop of all those sort of dark gothy bands. And we kind of started as that, but like our thing was always like to provoke. We always wanted to be obnoxious and just sort of like fuck with people. So we did what we did in really unconventional terms. Like we would write songs in which we would just do these loops that we would just like repeat over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Like our whole thing was like, we're just going to hypnotize people. We were such weird kids. I don't know why. But then we would like in terms of like what was going on, there was dark, there was goth, there was like, fashion wise, it was like really spooky and white face and teased black hair. But we would do things like we all had dreadlocks for some reason, like,
because that was the ultimate counterculture.
Pretty much.
The ultimate white people with dreadlocks at that point. It's like, who are these people?
So weird. Like back then, like you never saw that. I'd never seen that before at that time. It was something like absolutely bizarre and a weird appropriation of like cultures and stuff. And I feel weird about it now and it felt weird to write about, but that's what it was. We would wear dashikis and we were really into like that troupe, The Last Poets, who were like a black radical, like sort of
Gil
like
Scott Heron.
Yeah, Gil Scott Heron.
He grew up here, like right here, like the next block over.
Oh, really? Like really close?
Yeah, and the next project over.
That's wild.
Yeah, he's from here.
Then he must have moved to San Francisco.
Did he?
No, maybe they were here.
I think
were
they were
New York? They were in New York.
But I got to interview Gil Scott Heron, and I was on heroin.
Oh, nice.
And I think he was too.
Oh, wow.
It was a great moment. Anyway, you guys were totally subversive. White guys,
we were
dreadlock,
and incense, and we would play these loops on stage, and we like we had no intention at all of being conventional at all, and we would have like a different singer for every single show. We would like literally, we would write new songs and have a different singer for every show we played, and we built it as such, like this thing, Faith No More. That's what we were. We were just kind of this performance, weird art performance troupe, if you will.
Well, it was an amazing time because, like, you talk about some of the clubs back then, and the way you described it in the book was these places will never be again.
Right.
And they were also all named incredibly poetically, and they existed outside of time and space for people like us and older people, throwbacks to hippies, pre-hippies, weirdos who just didn't fit in, and it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
And like in that era, just as a kid, like I'm a few years younger than you, but I was very paying attention to what was happening, and being weird and having a tribe and a sound and a weird thing. There was a lot of currency in that. And yes, at that point, the music industry was still totally functional, but you could be a weird offshoot band and have a career.
Yeah. Kind of. It didn't feel like a career was feasible at the time. Like it felt like so contrary and such a sort of like weird, unorthodox way of presenting ourselves. It never felt to me like there was ever a potential career to it. Like later on, I think as we like toured, like eventually like, okay, some money trickled in and we made some money. But like, yeah, I guess like back then it was like it was more of a sort of like possibility of career than now. I don't know how kids do it now, how kids tour and make money and sort of make it work. But back then, I think the only way we did was like by touring so relentlessly. But it always, to what you're saying, like it always felt to me like this was never going to go anywhere, which I was fine with. It just wasn't sort of the goal. We would talk about it in terms of like ridiculousness, I think, and sort of like it was a hilarious assumption that maybe we would get on the radio or something like that. It was just like insane, like, because we were doing just such crazy like shit. It never felt like it was a viable like commercial outlet.
But it's like if you hear about the Ramones, when the Ramones talk about their career, they did Rock and Roll High School, whatever. But they even when they were in their like 40s or late 30s, they were touring in a van 20 years later. They made more money from selling T-shirts than they ever made from selling records.
Is that what they say?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And like bands like when I was a kid, I remember going to see Murphy's Law when I was in college in Ithaca, and like there's a whole scene for bands that weren't going to be on MTV, but there were enough weird clubs that you can travel the country and get a couple hundred kids freak out for your band.
Right.
Now, when does Courtney show up?
Courtney like came into the mix. I'm really bad with years. I have no idea. It was like in the 80s for sure. We were both probably, I'm going to say we were 22 maybe. But she kind of like, we'd all lived in San Francisco for a while. And I think she had been in San Francisco and then she moved to Japan maybe. It's really unclear to me still. This is what I say in the book because I'm not sure. But I remember like Faith No More played like maybe our second or third show. And at that point we were rotating singers. And she showed up at the club that we were playing in and she was wearing a wedding dress, I remember. And she had just gotten back from Japan. And that's how we met. And she was like, she found me in the club. She saw the show and she was like, I'm going to be your singer. I was like, hi. And that's what happened. She's very pushy and sort of just like, you know, then from then on, like, yeah, for, I don't know. She was probably in the band, I'm going to say for maybe 6 months, something like that. She was the singer. I think she was our first like long-term-ish singer. We'd had like shows in which there was just one person that was at the helm. And then she got on board for a bunch of shows.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Sure.
Why don't you say her last name in the book?
I don't think I say anyone's last name in the book.
I love the way you describe the Red Hot Chili Peppers in the book. Anthony and the guy who's named after, I don't think you say Anthony. You say the guy who's named after a bug. That's what you write in the book.
Yeah.
So your relationship with Courtney is incredibly intense though.
Yeah, for sure.
And she's like, she's not your first heterosexual lover?
No, you know, like for sure I'd had girlfriends as a kid. I think being younger, it's a lot more easier to sort of be bi or whatever. For me, it was. Like now I was actually thinking about the other night, like as I was going to sleep, what it would be like to have sex with a woman. But I hadn't thought about it for a long time. But as a younger person, it's a doable thing. It's like, oh yeah. And sort of like we were really like catapulted into this weird chemistry, she and I were. And we really kind of hit it off. I talk about this whole story in the book where we first met. The night after I met her, she came over and we hung out and we were somewhere, we walked somewhere and she's like, what sign are you? And I'm like, I'm Cancer. She's like, I'm Cancer. What's your birthday? I'm like, July 1st. She's like, my birthday is July 1st. I was like, oh, both of us were like, oh my God. And at that age, we were just like, oh my God, we are just meant to be. Here we are, you and me, same birthday. And we celebrated our birthdays together for years and years, probably 6 years, whatever. Like that was just our thing, July 1st. And that was such a connection that we had. And then at one point I was like, sorry, spoilers, this is all in the book, but like, I was with her at a Mexican restaurant in the Mission and she went to the bathroom and left her purse on the table and I was just going through her purse because that's the kind of person I am. And I found this ID of hers, which is wild. She'd have an ID. I didn't even know she would ever have an ID. I guess she needed a passport to travel. And oh my gosh, she wasn't born on July 1st at all. She was born on July 8th or 7th or something.
That's and you love Courtney Love.
I do love her. She's fantastic. So I walk away from that as like, oh my God, that was a real feat.
Well, it's like she gets a lot of heat every which way.
Sure.
She's a very like palpable figure and a very powerful figure, obviously. Yeah. Now you describe her as pushy, but what was it like to like dream and scheme with her and like, cause she was so ambitious and she was such a visionary. And I mean, I'm a big fan.
Right.
Like, and I love her fury. She gets so
Right.
much bad fucking press, but her fury and her desire to be who she became was so fun.
Yeah.
What was it like with you and her when she's so young and hadn't done it yet?
Yeah, straight up, she's like, there's no one like that person. She's just like a remarkable force. And I think what gets overlooked a lot about her is she's so funny. She's hilarious.
Right.
So like our thing, I think like mostly growing up was just like super sarcastic, like really just like making fun of everyone a little bit, but also like trumping, I hate to say that word. Also like what's another word for that? Like,
trumping, being bigger than, better than?
Yeah, maybe that. Just like upping ourselves a little bit. Yeah, a little bit topping. But we were like very much sort of conspiratorial in a way. Like we were making stuff together, and it was like a lot of it was just like kind of like flattering ourselves. And we're talking about like how like special we were and what we were bringing to the table and how unique that was, and sort of like just yeah, she really is too. She's into sort of, I mean, I think people talk about like it's the same sort of thing with Madonna. I think like at the end of the day, people talk about what a marketing genius or something she was, like, I guess. And you could say that about Courtney and say that, oh yeah, she was so driven and so like inherent and so like really like worked it to get to where she got to. But at the same time, like what I see in her is like she had a really strong sense of craft. I think that was always and still is super important to her. And she's really an awesome poet, and she's really good with words, and she does her research. She's not lazy. She's really smart. And I think all of that gets sort of overlooked at some point. And they just say like, oh yeah, she married Kurt Cobain. She, you know, like the things that she's done, like she became an actress, like kind of like looking down on her for that, or like criticizing a person that would do that. And like, I don't know, she's a lot more than sort of like the propulsion that made her famous is what I mean to say.
Or the drug addiction and the infamy.
Yeah,
of the
well,
story.
that's a whole nother thing. Like, you know, that's, you know.
I had Patty Schemmel on the show years ago.
Cool.
And the way she talked about Courtney, just about, and if you read anything about Courtney Love or you hear her talk about rock and roll and movies and culture, she knows her shit. And she loved it. Like, and just as a music fan, to know what a music fan she was.
Right.
And the stuff that you guys were doing, I mean, was really planting the seeds for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, those kind of ideas and like who we're going to be and what we're going to be about, it actually came through fruition.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah.
What kind of drugs are you guys doing at that point?
You know, I mean, Courtney was doing heroin at that point. I was not doing heroin.
Did it scare you?
Like, yeah, it scared me a little bit. I talk about this in the book too, but I'm going to stop saying that. I'm just going to talk like we're talking because I'm just telling stories. That's part of why I wrote the book.
Hold on, I want to say something.
Yeah.
Fucking Roddy's book is incredible.
Thank you.
It reminds me a bit of Patti Smith's book, but I like your book way more.
Oh, wow.
I think your book is amazing. And whatever Roddy says right now, it's nothing compared to the book.
Yeah.
The book this is an entree to getting the book.
Okay.
It will not stymie purchases. It will enhance them.
Yeah, it's not spoilers.
No. We're talking.
Thank you. I'm flattered. But what was I saying?
You were saying heroin, that era, fucking drugs, fear of heroin.
Oh, Courtney was doing heroin. I was not doing heroin. And I remember like probably the gateway of trying it for the first time. I remember like Courtney got some opium in Chinatown somehow. And we got back to the apartment. We're like, I didn't know how to do opium. Like, who did? Who knows how to do opium? What do you do? Smoke it? But Courtney has the idea. She's like, well, you know, the best way, the most effective way is you put it up your butt.
So you did?
Absolutely. Yeah. We put it up our butts. But that was like the first sort of like foray into like, I guess, opiates. And then another time, like close to around that time, I remember I had a job at this crazy movie theater. And everyone that worked in the movie theater was like, really outsider and so fun and so amazing and inspiring. And I remember Tegan, the projectionist, he was going through a sex change, which we'd never seen before. And we didn't even know back then, like the pronouns, we didn't even know how that worked. It was just Tegan was Tegan, and we called him a he. I guess eventually we knew she was a she, but anyway, like I remember they had some powder, which I just assumed was speed. And she's like, do you want to do some, I remember what the word he said. It was like, do you want to do some powder or something like that? And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. And I did it, and I didn't know it was heroin, and it was heroin. And I was like, oh, wow. And I didn't know. And it was like this weird, like it wasn't a speedy high. It was a different high. And I was like, oh, I thought that was something else. But I think that was one of the first times I tried it.
But you were never an up person anyway, right?
I think I did like speed a couple times, more accidentally than not. That wasn't my bag. No, I don't like speed.
I feel like I didn't like speed. I didn't like coke. I didn't like crack.
Right.
I didn't like any of that stuff. And I feel like you and I actually have similar kind of personalities that were kind of bubbly anyway. And I think the drug really affects your brain chemistry. Like I loved heroin because it slowed me down,
right?
And it gave me peace, and it was incredibly pleasurable at my core. I loved weed like that too, though.
Right.
Faith No More, you describe people would come to see what Courtney might do.
Yeah.
And did you like her as the singer in the band?
Yeah, I really did. Like we were really close. And like I was saying before, her sense of humor, like I just found her so funny. Like she still just makes me laugh like no one. She's so hilarious. She's so ridiculous, the stuff that she does. Like she would like that wedding dress, she would wear it on stage. Or one time I remember she made Billy wear the wedding dress. Or like she went to like the flower mart before we played like early in the morning and got like garbage bags and garbage bags of like flowers and covered the stage with flowers, and we had candles, and like it was the lengths that she would go to were not always funny, but like really just like preposterous and insane. And she brought a lot to the mix, which I think for me, it was a different thing. The other guys in the band were different kind of guys. Like I think it comes down to like, I was raised by women mostly. I had 3 sisters and a mom. And I think I was way more comfortable sort of like being in sort of the presence of a woman that was fronting the band, opposed to the guys in the band who weren't as much comfortable there. They didn't appreciate as much Courtney as I think as I did. And I think eventually that's why we sort of like, that was it. There was like, the other 2 guys in the band, there were 3 of us, and we'd have kind of a musical chair sort of like presence of guitar. But the other 2 guys were like done with Courtney before I was done with Courtney.
What was the end of Courtney in the band?
I don't remember what happened, but I think it was kind of like did come down to there was a sense that people would show up to shows to see what she would do. So it felt like the histrionics of that, or like what she was going to do on stage, was overshadowing the music, which we were so serious about. And I think there was some resentment about that. Like, yeah, all of a sudden, like the show was like more of a carnival or a circus around this like ridiculous person, Courtney, and people were interested in that. And that sort of like rubbed people in a way.
Totally. And then it would have been Courtney Love's band is Faith No More.
That too, yeah.
Was she Courtney Love at that point?
No, I think she was Courtney Manili was her name. I think she chose Love when she was in a movie at one point. She was up for the role of Nancy Spungen when Alex Cox made Sid and Nancy. Yeah. Which, of course, she should have got that role. Like, why was Courtney not Nancy Spungen? That was the biggest missed opportunity. But she was sort of unproven at the time. And I remember she went to LA and she auditioned and she threw herself into it as only she could. But I think that was her first role in a movie, and they asked her for, and that's when she called herself Courtney Love.
The lady in that movie who played Nancy was really good, though.
She was so good.
She was really good. And Courtney was still there. She was making the scene.
Yeah.
She felt like she
was
belonged
in the
there.
movie, yeah.
You know? So at some point she's not in the band anymore.
Right.
And you stay friends.
Sure. Yeah.
And where does Mike Patton show up from?
He comes like after Courtney, then we had Chuck, who was in the band for a long time, which is a whole Faith No More chapter unto itself. He was our first like real long-term singer. He was a singer for 2 records. We made 2 records with Chuck, and he was like a mess and a monster and so fun and like undeniable and a super great stage presence and just super special. But in the same way, we parted ways with Chuck, like 2 records in. I think it was mostly like a drunk thing more than anything with Chuck. But similar in that he was creating sort of a splash of a drama on stage that was maybe sort of like not so much what we were doing. I don't know.
I think it's so interesting also that the band started without a singer. So you could be like, we don't need this singer anymore. We're going to keep going. We're done with this singer.
Yeah. It was just preposterous, that sort of notion. And it was always weird to me. I think you asked a while ago about like how like commercially viable or whatever the project would have been or what we were doing as kids would have been. And in that sense, in a band in which like the members don't really put any creed into the lead singer, like, what kind of future is there? Like, it was just like kind of overlooked. Like, it didn't really matter what our singer was doing. And that's kind of a question, not a statement. It was like, how could that be sort of a notion? Like, oh, yeah, it doesn't really matter. We'll just get a singer. We'll just like, the singer will just do whatever. And it's like, what? No, the singer, everybody, is everything. The singer, the focal point is where it all kind of like starts. And we kind of ignored that for a long time. And even with Chuck, he was dynamic and awesome, but also like so fucked up and crazy and like such a weird mess. Like, why would we do that for all the time we did it? I mean, it worked out fine and no regrets. And it was an amazing sort of presentation, but it was just like it was a funny premise on our parts to not put that much creed into like the weight of a lead singer.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because you wind up getting such a powerful lead singer also.
Yeah.
But I think it's around that time you describe a boyfriend you have who's out of control, like crazy. And you describe being really infatuated with his mental illness.
Right. Which at the time, you know, we didn't know that was mental illness. But it was more for me, it was just this eccentricity and just sort of this colorful trait of this person who was wild and confrontational and argumentative and so smart. You know, not that different from Courtney, honestly. He was just so wildly smart and provocative and such a jerk. Like, people hated him.
And you love that.
Oh, yeah. That was everything. It was so exciting. And we were boyfriends for like, you know, a long time, 10 years.
People hated Courtney too.
Oh, yeah.
You loved that.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
The controversy.
I don't know if it was the controversy, but it was definitely like there's an impetus to someone that can go in that way that's like so over the top and so committed and so doesn't give a shit about anything, but then also does. But yeah, there's something about that kind of a person that's definitely attractive to me. It's not, I just want to make it clear that it's not just because everyone hates that person that I like that person. I truly love that person for what they are. The hates from other people kind of is a secondary thing that happens and there's fallout from that. But my initial sort of getting on board with a person that's that outrageous is like, it's based on who that person is. And that boyfriend was insane. And I know now, we say mental illness. I know now, like I talked to someone kind of recently when I was writing the book and I was like, how did Jim Olsen pass? Like, how did he die? And my friend Matthew, who is really good friends with him, was like, oh yeah, well, you know, he was what's that term? What was Sybil? Sybil had split personalities.
Oh, schizophrenic?
He was
bipolar schizophrenic.
He was bipolar schizophrenic, you know that. And I was like, I'd never said those words aloud in regards to him. I was like, and I was just sitting on the phone with Matthew and I was like, oh, yeah, he was, wasn't he? But back when we were kids and we were like, living through it, that never dawned on me that there was some sort of like clinical thing.
Well, it reminds me of that weird post-punk rock style. You know what I'm saying? Like this post-punk rock style that is amorphous, and it could include Faith No More, it can include Jane's Addiction, it can include Red Hot Chili Peppers, it can include all these bands that's kind of born in punk rock.
Right.
And you have all these people that are kind of like mentally ill, and it's never discussed. And this scene is populated with this weird, disparate kind of crew, and mental illness is never discussed, and cultural appropriation is never discussed. There's a million things, like how it's like where we are right now in time is so different than then, but it seemed so new. It was so new then. It's amazing. And you start touring hardcore at that point?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, when we put out a record with Chuck, and that's when we started touring. Then we toured.
And then like, when do you tour with the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Kind of early on. I think it was probably like we had toured the country maybe once before, and then I don't know how we ended up touring with them, but yeah. Then we did a full on like nationwide tour with them, and they were pretty big at the time. They weren't huge like Red Hot Chili Peppers huge, but they were big based on just what they did. And
they were big pretty quick because they had a couple of MTV songs, like 120 minutes.
Yeah.
Like Higher Ground and stuff, like at that point. And what was the story where you get arrested with them?
I think we were at that point, like we were in this crazy old orange Dodge truck with a trailer on the back of it. That's how we were traveling at the time. And I had shaved my head. I didn't have the dreadlocks anymore. And I was bald, and I would wear this white paper suit for some reason.
What is a paper suit?
It's like
a painter suit kind of thing?
Exactly. It's a painter suit.
Okay.
That's what it was. And I saw someone wearing it, painting a house. I was like, oh, I want to wear that. And I got that, and I didn't realize it doesn't really breathe, that suit.
No, paper's horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's so hot. But anyway, that was sort of my like outfit for the tour. Is I was wearing this big white paper suit with glasses, and I was bald. And then Chuck, who was just like kind of like a crazy, like, well, I'm just setting the stage for like we all looked crazy. We also were traveling with this guy, Joe Ventris, who was helping us with guitars and stuff at the time. But Chuck and I had a real weed thing. We were always about the weed. Like we'd play a show and smoke weed, and we needed weed. And where were we going to find weed in the morning and after the show? And like that was always a quest. But Joe Ventris and Chuck and I were in that orange truck outside of like, it was like a fraternity house. For some reason, like someone had paid a lot of money to Red Hot Chili Peppers to play at their frat house. It was like a frat party in Florida. And we were there, and we had already played. We played with them at the frat house, and we went out to the car, and we're sitting, as conspicuous as three people can be, like wearing what we were wearing, looking the way that we did, sitting in this crazy orange, like Dodge. It was like a 66 Dodge with a trailer, smoking weed. And then, of course, we get arrested. Boom. The cops show up and like arrest us for smoking pot. So then the three of us went to jail, and then the rest of the band got us out the next morning. And that was that.
I just think it's amazing to follow the story. One thing in the story to me that maybe I missed it. Maybe it wasn't that big a deal to you.
Yeah.
Like when Faith No More exploded, like when that video for Epic came out, like I remember, like I didn't listen to Faith No More. I listened to like whatever. I listened to like the Beatles. I don't know. But that song was so catchy, and the video was so pervasive, and it became like the biggest song in the world.
Right.
And you don't really describe the band exploding in the book.
Right.
Why not?
It's a funny resistance I have to like talking about sort of I'm going to call them cliches, but they're not really cliches. They are just like what they are. But like something like that, like the success factor, or you talked about earlier about bringing up people's last names, like why I don't say Courtney Love or why I don't say
The
like
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
or like people's names. I never like going into this process. I have had a real resistance, still do to the rock bio.
The star fuckery of it all.
Well, that's part of it, but also it's just cheesy to me. A bio is super cheesy. A memoir is super cheesy. Like I was really resistant to putting memoir on the cover of the book. And they really wanted to say Faith No More on the cover of the book. And I guess, it will probably be better for the book in a selling point. Maybe not. I don't know, whatever. But whatever, that kind of a book, the bio sort of book with pictures in the middle, I always bring up the type of book that has like a bunch of pictures in the middle of it. I didn't want to write that book. I don't want to have anything to do with that kind of book. I don't want that kind of presentation. As I consider myself more of a fancy lad, I like prose. I've always liked, super pretty prose and sort of sophisticated language. And
the writing is beautiful.
Thanks so much. But like, I always aim to sort of like do that and not the other thing. Which to me, the other thing is people's last names and like citing like definite like pivotal points. And then Epic came out and boy, were we excited.
Did you hate it? Did you hate being such a big, crazy, successful band? You kind of hated the hard rock aspect. You allude to that in the book.
Yeah.
You liked being the weirdo who didn't have a lead singer.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you have this very, very, very charismatic lead singer. You have this very great thing, and you were like, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, it does happen in a really kind of like cliched sort of way. Like the pretty boy singer replaces the
ugly alcoholic singer.
Like man of color that was an alcoholic, and all of a sudden everything turns like sparkly and like the checks start coming in. And there was that, but like I was always in a position for myself. I think like all of a sudden we got thrown into this rock sort of world where we hadn't been before. There were all of a sudden like flying V guitars and like Guns N' Roses liked Faith No More and like Metallica, and they brought us on tour, and all of a sudden we were sort of accepted by this whole like world of heavy metal, and we kind of got like thrown into that category, which was really, really like weird and offensive to me. But at the same time, it was just like, okay, like I could adjust and I kind of was on board. But I did have the unique sort of position of being not only gay, but being the keyboardist in that mix. Because in those bands, in hard rock bands, in like, Metallica, like whatever, Guns N' Roses, the hard rock aggro sort of thing is like, there's no room for keyboards in that scenario. So me being that in our band sort of set me apart from the rest of that world already. Like already I was kind of like, what's that?
What's fascinating, I didn't realize it until right now. It's like, you're not a heroin addict in that book until that happens.
Right.
And you're probably reacting to all this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and you go on, and you also refuse to say Guns N' Roses in the book. You write the Guns and the Roses.
Right.
Which is great. But it's from there that you become a heroin addict.
Yeah.
Do you think you were just, when I was a kid and my mother made me get bar mitzvahed, and I didn't want to get bar mitzvahed.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, she goes, well, what'd she say? She said, it's my party. It's not your party. And she said, I don't care if you want to do it or not because you're fucking doing it. Right. And I was so embarrassed, right? It really like fucked with me. It embarrassed me to like, I wouldn't get on the chair. I wouldn't do any of the stuff.
Why embarrassed?
I don't know, because I felt like I didn't want to be the center of attention in that way.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if this is true. I'm totally projecting. Did you react to being the center of attention in a mainstream way where like you were in a cool fucking weirdo band in San Francisco with Courtney Love and Chuck and this rotating kind of amalgam of trance music and fucking groove music and dashikis, and now you have this rapping lead singer, the biggest video on MTV, flying V guitars, lightning bolts, eyeballs, where you like, I don't feel comfortable. I need to get high and do dope.
Yeah, probably. Like I've thought about it in those terms, but that's very well put. I'm sure like that was like, yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Coupled with like, I think like I usually attribute my sort of drug use at the time with also being gay and not open about it in that world. That was a big part of it. I think when I look back at it, it's hard when you look back on stuff, there's a sort of sense of clarity. And I think, yeah, you're hitting a couple like things that definitely it was sort of that. There was some guilt to letting go of Chuck, firing him, and moving on to like a squeaky cleaner sort of image, or sort of like, I mean, which is ridiculous. Mike Patton was not squeaky clean, but like definitely there was some guilt to having sort of like chosen some sort of faction of the mainstream and gone down that road that was uncomfortable. But also, yeah, for sure, it was the gay part that I think led me to an uncomfortability that, yeah, the drugs kind of like helped with in a while.
So where does the addiction ramp up then? Like, when do you find yourself like, I'm doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, you're right on the money, like right then, basically, right then. I mean, I don't know why things happen the way they do, but yeah, like right then, I think, like at the chorus where we lost Chuck as the singer and we were doing, we made our first big record. I think that's when kind of heroin came into the picture. Also peripherally, I think like heroin, like we were saying at the beginning of our chat, like heroin became like a cooler thing. So coincidentally, like sort of it was there for me in a cooler way that it wasn't before. And also, oh, that's an interesting aspect. I'm just thinking now, like that was me sort of like holding on to sort of like a cool thing that was provocative and outrageous and fucked up and not right, but cool also, heroin. That sort of was like how we started as the band. We were provocative and outrageous and cool and dangerous and weird. And all of a sudden, the morph of the band was which we weren't so much that. So like maybe, yeah, the other side of me was still holding on to that, which was heroin. Yeah.
Well, heroin also tied into all that post-punk style that doesn't necessarily make sense. You know what I mean? Like there's that post-punk style, which can be like all these different styles, and heroin is definitely a common bond in all those fucking bands at that point. When does it ramp up personally for you though? Like on that tour, like you describe opening for the Guns N' Roses and Metallica and like trying to figure out where you're going to get dope. And one of my favorite things, because I was mostly here when I was young and I kind of knew where I was going to get dope. And once in a while I'd go somewhere and I would be like, how am I going to figure this out? And when I read these memoirs, and I appreciate you hating on memoirs, but I like them. I don't think they're so bad. I think they're pretty, I think they have their place. I don't think you should be down on them too much. And I love hearing about like where Jerry Garcia would figure out how to cop when he's on the road and stuff. And you're describing that, like, how am I going to find my spot? And I'm just like, why aren't you asking Slash for his heroin?
Right.
I'm serious. Why didn't you just ask Slash? Like, did you tell him?
Right. At the time, no. We weren't like, we were the opening band, and I think they appreciated what we were as a band, but we were not mingling with the members of Guns N' the Roses.
That's interesting to me because I feel like
I never spoke with him, not once.
Never?
Never.
In your whole life?
No, in my whole life.
That's so disappointing as a fan.
As a fan of the Guns N' the Roses?
As a fan of rock and roll in general.
Right.
Because you
would think, but at that point, like Guns N' Roses were so huge. They were like kind of like behind closed doors backstage, and you didn't really see them. Like they would arrive to the show, they would play the show, they would leave. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe our guitar player might have like mingled with them and stuff, but we would get to the shows we were opening for Guns N' Roses and Metallica. We would get there really early. We'd play the shows. We'd generally be hated by the audience and we'd leave. And that was the end of that. But I think at that time, that was when like heroin was really coming into my mix. And it was a crazy sort of back and forth. Like a lot of the shows we were on were getting canceled for lots of different reasons. There was like injuries on the tour. There was like this soothsayer woman that was like traveled with Guns N' the Roses, and she would like say like, oh, this show is not good to play, cancel. And they would cancel shows and we would go home. which all leads to me going home, and then I do dope. And like my habit was such that like I was going back and forth and trying to get drugs and not. And it was just sort of like that whole like merry-go-round of that put me in a weird, like sort of like habitual place with the drug that I hadn't been in before.
No, I remember when I decided that I was going to actually, like, I had a habit and I'd be like, not going to use for a few days because I can't handle getting a habit. And then I got a job that was like this pretty well-paying job, and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to have a habit. Like I'm going to figure out how to support this thing.
You made that decision.
I made that decision. Right. And it's interesting, like, because you described the scene and you were so close with Courtney, and then you have this emergence of Seattle and grunge, and they're all fucking heroin addicts, it seems like.
Right.
And you were aligned with that. How was that alignment? How did that work?
I think honestly, like I was friends with Courtney, and then she got involved with Kurt, and they really their sort of relationship. There was a lot of heroin in that. And they were, I was close with them, and that's sort of like, I don't know, I was doing heroin with them. And then as Nirvana became what Nirvana became, heroin just became this like, oh, this like, wow, this kind of like beacon of like, wow, it was so cool. And like, not to be too sycophantic, but I was like friends with like these two people that were so famous, and it was dazzling and sort of like exciting to sort of like be in that mix and doing that drug. And the rest of my band were not that way. No one in Faith No More did heroin. And it further separated me from like them, and kind of like laid it out like what a different person I was, you know?
I totally skipped over the thing I wanted to know though. What was it like when Epic becomes the biggest song in the world for you?
Oh, yeah. It was super exciting, but at that time, I think we had been on tour for so long. Like our record came out, and I think we toured that record literally like a year and a half, kind of nonstop. Like we stopped for Christmas and stuff. But basically, it was like at the time when it kind of like became big, which was a year and a half into the touring, we were like kind of like, yeah, so what?
You didn't
like,
get rich from it? It wasn't like all of a sudden I'm driving a Corvette and stuff?
No, but like I did, like at one point we got back from tour, and I got a check for $12,000. That was like the beginning of everything for me. Like, and that was like right when stuff started to kind of take off. But back then I remember it was near Christmas, and I was at my parents' house, and someone showed up. I don't know why they would do that, but they delivered a check to me via car service.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened in that way. I've never seen that again. But someone brought me a check, and it was like an envelope from Faith No More. I was like, Faith No More, this is us. And I opened it, I was like, oh, like it was compensation for the entire sort of like year on what we'd been doing. And I got a check for $12,000. It was like the most money ever. So crazy. But that was the only sort of payout. In terms of like the success of Epic, like it just, my point was like we had been at it for so long that when it finally happened in that way, we were almost more resentful than anything. Right. We're like, yeah, well, this should have happened like 9 months ago. Like fuck off, kind of, which was so bratty and typical of us, you know?
That's great though. I mean, I love your abhorrence of all things fame and success. I think it's fantastic. But you were just describing the potential sycophant nature of being like the third wheel in this junkie super couple.
Right.
Like
right,
what?
Right.
I mean, like what as a fly? Like if I'm the fly on the wall, like what is it like? And when you're doing heroin with Kurt and Courtney and hanging out and like. Because Kurt loved your band, loved you. Like, I'm sure he held you in this esteem even before Nirvana became Nirvana.
Right. Yeah, it was a funny sort of dynamic. Like, I think Kurt really liked me. Part of what, like, we got along well because I was gay, and I think he really liked that. Like, he liked Courtney in the same way that I liked Courtney, or I loved Courtney. It was like, you know, she was so preposterous and unapologetic and just sort of did what she did and had a voice that was like unique to her. And I think he recognized like that was sort of a connection I think we had. I think he was really into the fact that I was gay. I think he really appreciated that and was like, that was sort of a thing. And it's a weird, like thinking back on it when you ask that question, I'm like, oh yeah. Cause like I have this weird connection with Courtney because she and I used to, we had like a relationship. And then like kind of with him, it was almost like similar, but like he was like, like he was definitely into the fact that I was gay. And we both knew that and talked about it. So there was this weird kind of like, sexual tension, but not sexual tension at all. There was no sexual tension, but that was in the mix, sort of like, in a weird way.
You both love this outsider shit.
Yeah.
Like outsider culture.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, he had a lot of lyrics about being gay and wanting to be gay and
sure.
and just being whatever isn't what you're supposed to be.
Right.
And I sense that from you too. And from Courtney. But
Yeah.
Courtney also had that other feeling like she wanted to be everything.
Right.
And Kurt kind of wanted to be nothing and everything at the same time.
Yeah, she was a little more aspirational.
But I mean, like, he was too. I mean, like, right? I mean, his heroes were all like the biggest of the big, and his
Right.
style was to emulate the biggest of the big. And his songwriting was very hooky and
Right.
and he had a great sense of style and sound and length and all this stuff.
Sure.
Like there was no stopping it, really.
Right.
What's it like getting high with them? Where were you getting heroin? Like, what was the deal? Is that an annoying question?
Not really, no. It was like, I think like they were living in LA at the time. I think, I don't know where we got drugs. We had the same drug dealer for a while. She lived in Hollywood. Was she the drug dealer? Or I just can't remember. I can't remember if she was the drug dealer or if she was the person that we relied on to get the drugs. I can't remember.
Was she the motorcycle lady?
No. That was someone in San Francisco. That was a dealer in San Francisco who rode the motorcycle. The woman in LA, I remember her apartment, for some reason, she had like these really big oversized utilities, like a huge fork and a huge spoon and a huge, like, I don't know why I remember that really well, but that was sort of like a decor of her apartment. I don't know why. But I remember like Kurt and Courtney would kind of like, I remember they would bring her with them on trips that they would do. Like by that point, I think like Nirvana were playing shows and they would bring her along because she had connections to drugs. But it was always sort of that. It was always hard to get drugs. There was no continual sort of like drug dealer you could rely on. And I think we were like traveling a lot at that time, and we'd end up in certain places together, like, oh, Nirvana's playing this festival. Faith No More's playing this festival also at the same time, 2 days apart. I remember situations like that, and we'd get high. I think it was harder. Like Kurt at that point couldn't go out and get dope on his own. So maybe I did.
And when you were by yourself, who'd you get high with?
Just by myself.
And you had a whole coterie of dealers, like the lady on the motorcycle. And
like in San Francisco, I did. But going out on the road is a crazy sort of wrangle of like, how do you get drugs? Because like, I mean, I guess I'm assuming everybody who's listening to this podcast knows the score. But when you're a heroin addict, like it really is straight up just turns into like, if you don't do the drug, you get sick. You get physically sick. You throw up and you need it to sort of like feel better. And it's a crazy thing to be on tour and you've got to play the show. And if you're getting sick, like it's really hard. So it's just this weird sort of like equation of like, yeah, you just have to do the drug or you're going to get sick.
Well, do you remember like, where would you go? Like, I know like at some point in my using career, I would be like, I need to find where the methadone clinic is. And then everything just opens up.
Right.
Because if you go where the methadone clinic is, everybody is exactly as we were.
Right.
Everybody, all they have is heroin. Like I'd go to talk to homeless people.
Right.
Like I would say, and the thing I would always say is, I don't mean to freak you out. Right. But do you know where I can get some heroin?
Right.
That's what I'd always say. And like anybody who understood what you just described wouldn't be freaked out, and they'd be like,
Right,
"Oh, you
right,
got to
right,
be here
right.
at 5. Go to Del Taco at 5:30 in the morning,
Right,
and there'll
right.
be 6 guys." You know, like do you remember like where would you go? Like, how did you sort yourself out on the road?
Yeah, it was that. It was like Greyhound stations, I think, for sure was a go-to. Any sort of civic place for some reason, like in Europe, it was really easy. Parks were a real easy go-to. And in the same way that I talk about, I make the correlation in the book about like sort of like being a kid and finding gay sex when I wanted to like, have sex in the bushes or whatever with men. I had a real like acute nose for that. In the same way like drugs, I think as a junkie or as a person who's following that course, I had the same sort of like sensibility in terms of like finding drugs, like just hitting the street, and it was really easy to find. But it did turn into, the place where I would go would be like train stations or parks, a lot of parks.
And then you just use your junkie dart.
Yeah, and just like figured it out, which is so crazy. Did you read the like thanks for saying that about a bio memoirs. I'm not as opposed as I was sort of leaning into that earlier in our conversation. Like I also like memoirs, but did you read the that Mark Lanigan one?
No, I didn't read it.
Oh my God,
I know.
David, that's the number one.
It's like, I know, and I didn't listen to Screaming Trees. Like I didn't know anything about Mark Lanigan, and everybody wrote me, "You have to get him on the show. You have to get him on the show."
Right.
And I reached out to him, and he wrote me back, "I'll do the show."
Oh, cool.
And I was like, "Cool." And then he died.
Oh.
And I was like, I don't want to read the book now because he's dead. He can't do the show. But I should read. And I never listened to the music, so I'm like, I don't know. I should listen.
Did you listen to Mark Lanigan ever?
No, I never listened to him.
God, he's so dreamy. Besides, like his voice is just like butter. It's so insane. It's so beautiful. But that's something to look forward to.
Yes.
That book is insanity. That really details it out in a crazy way, like finding drugs in Europe, finding drugs on tour, going into places and being at that sort of like crazy place where you need it so bad to make yourself feel better. That book is insane.
All right, I'm going to read the book. And then you know what I want?
Wild.
I want you to come back on the show and us to do a show about Mark Lanigan's book.
Okay, yeah.
Would you be up for that?
Sure, yeah.
All right, very good. So when you're like, I'm a fucking junkie and I have a fucking problem?
I mean, once that comes into play where you realize that you need the drug to sort of make yourself better, it's like kind of the writing's on the wall. And it's like, oh, well, like you were saying earlier, like you made that choice. Like, okay, I'm going to have a habit. It's either that or not. And what's the choice? Like, that kind of like, it's so inconvenient to get clean. And it's really difficult, and when you're like have a job and you have to be somewhere and you have to perform and you have to be on, like, it's just too hard to try and get through it without drugs. And that all comes into play. It's like, okay, it's either I continue with this habit or I get clean. And get clean means you need some time. You need a couple weeks in which to sort of distance yourself and be alone and get through it. So at one point, I think after that, the Guns N' Roses sort of like tour and like that whole chapter and that era, and things were getting messy. And I think I'm not going to deny, like people started to know, and I'm not going to deny that that didn't have something to do with it. Like for sure, my family knew I was doing drugs. And so that started to come into the mix.
Well, they started to find like balloons in your pockets in the laundry.
Yeah. And then like other people too, like the band members knew. And so it became a thing where like I was being called out for like, doing what I was doing. And like, it became like, oh God, I got to stop, And so, I don't know, in that chapter somewhere, like, it didn't take me too long, honestly.
To get off of it?
Yeah. I mean, like, it didn't take a lot of times. Like, when I stopped, I think I was ready to stop. And then coincidentally, when I did stop, like, all these things happened at once. My father died. Kurt died. My really good friend, Cliff, died. Like, all of that happened within, like, a couple weeks. And it was just like, boom. But that was actually after I got sober. I got sober and then boom, that happened. And so I think that helped everything stick.
one of the craziest things in the book is like you're about to go to rehab with Kurt and Courtney.
Right.
And then she's like, nah, we're just going to take a bunch of Valiums. And you're like, I don't think I can do that. Or you had said in the book was you told your family you're going to go to rehab.
Yeah.
And then with Kurt, and you're like with Kurt and Courtney, and it's kind of this romantic intention. And Courtney's like, nah, I just got a bunch of Valium. Just come with us to Seattle.
Right.
And you're like, well, I just told my family that I'm going to go to rehab. And she says, well, maybe you should.
Right.
And as a reader, I'm like, well, why didn't you go off and do Valium with Kurt and Courtney?
Right.
So why didn't you? Like, what made you choose that path?
Exactly. I mean, things happen for a reason. Like, why wouldn't I just like, okay. Because I mean, the journey of being a junkie is always making decisions like that. Like you make the decision to get clean and then like, oh, well, this would be a little easier.
Do you want to pause for your eye? You want to go rinse your eye out?
No.
Okay.
Does it look funny or is it just because
No, I'm worried about your eye.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's allergies for some reason.
I get them
I
so
came
bad.
back into town and I've got all these allergies, but it's okay. But like, yeah, it was just sort of a choice that sort of happened in the weird, like, kismet sphere of like, whatever. Like I came home, like I had been up all night. I remember came home and I talked with Kurt and Courtney like overnight and we were like, okay, let's do this. Let's do this. We were going to go into this rehab place in Los Angeles and they had 3 beds, they said, for us and we could go in. I was like, okay, book those 3 beds. We're coming in tomorrow. So we made the decision and it was scary and it was going to happen, but it was kind of like also comforting that I was going with those guys and it was going to be like this sort of together thing. And I went home and my dad at that point had cancer and it was like a weird charged family sort of environment. Like all my sisters were there and my father was dying and I was like, and I was supposed to be like helping with everything and I was really just a hindrance because I was kind of, I was fucked up. And I told them all like, this is what's up. I'm going to go into rehab and it's going to take a while, but I just got to do this. And my dad particularly was like, that's great. Great decision. Do this. And so we all talked about it kind of early morning as a family. And then like, I mean, just in a crazy way, the phone rang and then it was Courtney and she's like, Roz, she calls me Roz. She goes like, change of plans. We're going to Seattle. We got plane tickets. And a whole bunch of Valium, and we're going up there. And like, yeah, who wouldn't make that choice? But I think it just came down to like, I had told my family already and I was kind of locked in. And I was like, I don't think I can like go back and say like, no, I'm going to do it in Seattle instead. I'm not going to get clean in Seattle. So I kind of like, that was a real moment right there. That
One thing you don't really allude to in the book, and I want you to delve into this for a second. How bad is your drug addiction? Like, how bad is it? Like, what you just described, because my mom was dying of leukemia when I got sober, and it was I couldn't be the way I was with her dying of leukemia.
right.
So that informed my decision to change. But I did nothing for years except heroin and methadone. Like I did nothing else. I like watched TV, ate ice cream sandwiches, and did methadone and heroin forever. And it wasn't until she was dying that I was like, oh my God, I need to do something differently. With your situation, how much of it was his cancer diagnosis?
How much was that?
To be the inspiration to be like, I can't be like this anymore? Or had you just gotten tired of using?
I kind of think not so much. Like when I got home from tour, like Dad was super sick and I had been clean for like a couple weeks.
Okay.
And I felt pretty good. And I was sort of on the course to sort of staying clean. But I got back to the airport and my sisters were all there at the airport when I got back from like England. We had played this really big festival where my dad was supposed to come and see me and hang with me, but he got sick. He had a stomach ache. And so I got home and my sisters were all there at the airport and they're like all crying. And it's just like, oh shit, Dad's gonna die. And so at that point, like I had been clean for a couple of weeks and my first impulse was just like go and get drugs. So kind of the opposite initially. I think sort of like as he got sick, like I went back to drugs because it was the only way I could think about like surviving myself or getting through it was like being high.
Here, scooch up to the mic more.
Yeah. And so that, but then like, yeah, into that, I think at some point that turned and I realized, I think like my dad had pancreatic cancer and it happened really fast. So there was a finite amount of time that I could kind of hang with him. And that became clear at some point, like, oh, wow. So I have like a month left with dad and oh my God, I got to stop doing drugs.
And the way we described kind of your turning on to heroin and heroin abuse around your success, do you think that's similar to what happened to Kurt? Do you think his success disgusted him to that level? Was that a big piece of it?
I think so, yeah. I don't think he loved being in the public eye in that way. And it was like sort of, but I mean, in the same way we were talking about my old boyfriend and the mental health, it was like a mental health issue. Like he was probably bipolar and like, depressed a lot of the time. So there was like, things that weren't being addressed, like in a sort of like medicinal sort of way. I mean, I think he was sort of like making himself better by doing dope. But at the same time, he was dealing with mental health issues. And there was like something that was really driving him to like the ultimate end of like, yeah, taking his life was like sort of all about like, yeah, his mental health wasn't checked, coupled with for sure. Like, yeah, he was like turning away from the limelight and like that was hard for him to deal with, I'm certain, but I don't know. I think it's hard to speculate. Like there's no sense to when people take their lives, and it's sort of like such a weird quandary that we're left with. But after it all, it's like, yeah, I think it just all kind of like, we conveniently sort of like write it off as like, not write it off. It is what it is, but it's a mental health issue. Like people like have like intense depression. Yeah. And that leads to a lot of suicide.
And you talked about stakes at the beginning of this thing, and the stakes for him were so fucking crazy high. And I'm sure the pressure was so out of hand to be this figure like that maybe he wanted to be when he was a kid, but when he actually got it, it wasn't exactly what he wanted.
Sure. Yeah.
And were you sober? Had you gotten clean when he died?
Yeah. Because I went to rehab and those guys didn't get clean for a while after that.
And Cliff was in the treatment.
Cliff, my friend, was in the treatment. Like I checked into rehab and this friend of mine that I didn't know so well, but I knew from Los Angeles was in the treatment center with me. Yeah, and we got sober together. Yeah.
And you describe, it really rung out in my head. You described not wanting, because he wanted to get high, like when you guys were in treatment, which is a very, natural thing in rehab to talk about fantasizing about getting high,
right?
And talking about what you're going to do, and you kind of make a point late in the book to talk about how you don't want to glorify drugs or using or because you were so about getting sober at the time. Like, how does that go in your head? Because sometimes people, like when we started the show, I started it with my friend who wound up dying this show, and people would give us shit that we were glorifying drugs by telling these stories. Yeah. But I thought we were just keeping people company who had shared experience.
Right.
And like when I sit down with somebody like you, we have a lot of shared experience that not everybody else has. And we're kind of talking to a group of people that we know has a similar experience. Yeah. And it keeps people from feeling insane and alone.
Right.
So when you talk about like concern about glorifying drugs in that moment, was that more about being in treatment? Like, and like, fearful of not being able to get it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. Like when I came in here and I was like so intent on like, oh my God, my favorite thing to talk about is like junkie tales and like crazy drug stories and the high stakedness of that. Like, Yeah, it is kind of like, I mean, yeah, I feel that. It's like a weird thing, like to talk about, to glorify, to sort of like, that's an entertainment thing. Like, I mean, it's like, is it? It's like, yeah, I know what you mean. But at the same time, like, I don't know, there's so many different ways of dealing with sobriety and dealing with sort of like getting clean. And it feels like, I don't know, everybody has different sort of like takes on like how to treat that sort of like that stance. And I think with AA, there's like a real seriousness that kind of pervades and is helpful for sure. Like when I got sober, I remember like it was serious. Like, don't talk about drugs in that way because it's not exciting and it wasn't cool. And it only leads to sort of like bad sort of memories that would make you do it again. And I think initially for myself, like I was way about that. Like, yeah, it's probably like, I can't go there. I don't want to talk about like how fun it was to get high or how exciting it was. Now, cut to like, I don't know, 25 years later or whatever, I feel I can be that way. But like there is sort of an issue of like, is that a good thing to put out in the world? I mean, I'm asking you too. Is that like I don't think it's a bad thing to put out in the world. I think it's just us dealing with our sobriety, dealing with our drug use in a very sort of like way that is personal to us. And that's the only way that I can deal with it. And I don't need to apologize for that, but I do recognize that like, yeah, it's kind of triggers.
I'm only bringing it up because when you go to treatment with Cliff, you actually say that in the book. You're
Right.
You're like, we don't want to glorify drugs. And it really spoke to me because I'm always accused of glorifying drugs.
Right.
Number one. Number two, I love drug stories to this day.
Yeah.
I love them day one of sobriety, and I love them at day 3,000, whatever I'm at.
Right.
You know, like my change around it happened when my friends died.
Right.
Like when my friend Todd died,
Who started the podcast with you?
Todd was my friend who I was a drug addict with,
Hmm.
who lived on my floor in the apartment I was telling you about. And I became a heroin addict with him. And he was I met him in college, stoner friend, and we became heroin addicts together. And me and Chris, another guy, were making the show, just like making fun of every aspect of addiction, making fun of AA, making fun of recovery, just trying to make sense of our situation. Because the craziest thing about being in recovery, I think, is like you're a fucking drug addict who did all this ridiculous shit, and now you're expected to have this morality and this spirituality and all of these things that were totally not how you were. So we laughed all the way through it. And then Chris relapses. I don't know about it.
Right.
I didn't know he was relapsing. And Todd drops dead. And when Todd dropped dead, I was fucking destroyed.
Right.
Like I was decimated, weeping, crazy, upset. And Chris was using, and I didn't know. And he comes on the show and starts talking shit about something. And I'm like, no, we can't do it like that now because it's different for me now. But I go back and forth. But that was my moment with it where I was just like it was too painful. You know what I mean? It was just too painful. And you describe Cliff, like you guys get out of treatment and you're doing your 90 and 90, and he can't stop thinking that the dealer's car is right there where he could get it whenever he wanted.
Right.
Which I could really relate to that too.
Yeah.
And then he overdoses?
Yeah. Then he died. He kept talking about that, like, about that car in the driveway. It kept coming up. And, then eventually acted on it.
Well, you were just talking about, like, getting clean and, like, that decision. Like, we talked about the decision of getting a habit and the decision of getting clean. And it's like, I couldn't imagine making that decision. I was so, like, ensconced in being high. Like the idea of not being high was so uncomfortable to me. Right. Like how could I live without feeling that feeling, you know? And it doesn't come naturally at all. And how did you get out of it where Cliff couldn't?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I think it comes down to mental health, honestly. Like, and I had support. maybe that Cliff didn't have, or like some people don't have. I had a really good family sort of support system that meant a lot to me. I think that made a difference in my getting clean. But then also, like, I don't know how much I was acting from a place of sort of like a lack of mental health. Like, like to think of myself as pretty stable, and like, I can sort of like hold my own, whereas maybe like I think Cliff was dealing with depression, and like Kurt was dealing with depression. And I think like coming out of a drug haze with depression is different than coming out of a drug haze without it, for sure. So the stopping of drugs for someone who's dealing with like mental health issues in an intense way is way more different and way more intense, and could lead to something like, suicide, taking your life. Whereas I don't know, it never dawned on me like that was sort of an option, or that's where I could go. Or even going back to drugs for some reason, like when I stopped, I stopped. And I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. It's also just kind of like some sense of luck and kind of like kismet, and who was around at the time and the people that I had surrounded myself with, how I got to stay clean and sort of like survive when other people didn't.
It's I love that you said it's luck in a way, because you never know how this thing is going to unfold.
Yeah.
And where were you when Kurt takes his life?
I was in San Francisco. I had been up to Seattle like a little before he passed away, and I was sort of like, I think I went up there like at that point, it was like they were struggling with trying to get clean and not. And it was a hard time for him, particularly for Courtney too. But like I went up there as a sort of like as a sober friend at that
Was
point.
it hard to be there with them using and you're freshly sober?
Kind of not, honestly. In a weird way, it like didn't really like I was kind of okay. Like I remember like as I said goodbye to Kurt the last time I saw him, was like he had the spoon in his hand and he was like shooting up, and it was just like kind of that's what it was. But it's sort of like we had been there together as friends before doing that exact same thing. So it wasn't something that was foreign to me. But for whatever reason, it didn't really it wasn't attractive to me. And it was sort of like, I don't know. I just felt sort of good with myself at that point. But I had been there, and that was right before. That was like probably a week before he took his life. So then I went home, and then I remember maybe like a week later, I was in San Francisco, and yeah.
How did you find out?
Well, Courtney called on the phone and said, "Come back." I was like, "What's going on?" She's like, "Well, turn on the news." And then it kind of all boom, it hit.
And you go up to Seattle?
Yeah, so I went back up there for a while after he took his life.
How long were you out there for?
Like a week, I'd say.
And what is it like to be a sober person? I mean, because it's like we're talking about a moment in time that's been discussed, been made into movies and documentaries, drama documentaries. Mm-hmm. The story's been told fucking 6 million times.
Yeah.
And she calls you and says, "Please come up."
Right.
Like, what is that experience like? And how does it sit with you now that it's become this crazy thing?
It doesn't really sit with me in that regard, like becoming a crazy thing. It was really honestly just like, I mean, I had been there and we were friends, and there was sort of this weird sycophantic sort of like issue of like, oh my God, these famous people. But at the same time, we've been friends since we were just like little and scrappy. And so it was just like this good friend, and sort of, I had been in that mix of like doing drugs, not doing drugs. And so it kind of just like, yeah, of course I'm going to go back there. She's kind of my best friend, and like go up and be with her. And she's going through this process of like her husband just took his life. And there were a couple other friends up there at the time that, that were in our inner circle, but it was like crazy intense. We just went up there and kind of lived in the house. And it was just this weird bubble of grief and getting through that with people, but also like surrounded by like, there was like paparazzi and press. And like, I remember like there were bodyguards at the house, and I remember the bodyguards were like, "Just watch what you say outside if you're out in the backyard." We're like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, because we keep finding like reporters are throwing microphones over the fence, like, and just sort of like they're trying to pick up on what everybody's talking about. So it was like this weird, like, and I don't know, I was younger at the time and it was just like, what? Like it was, just kind of brought it all into this crazy focus. And then the funeral and just like dealing with sort of the drama of that was a very intense time. And being kind of newly sober made it more that way too. It was just like everything was kind of crystal clear and sort of like emphasized like, okay, you're doing pretty good. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was sober and like, okay, had I, followed this course, like Kurt was someone that I was going to get sober with, we were going to go into rehab together. I did. He didn't. He's dead.
And I'm alive. And
I'm alive. And his wife, Courtney was out of her mind.
Like,
I don't know, dealing, I talk about it in the book, but dealing with grief in the way that she needed to deal with grief, but there were lines drawn, and like, oh my gosh, okay, I feel okay.
Well, it seems like one of the craziest places to ever be at any point in the last, 50 years, basically.
Yeah, it definitely was a historical sort of pinpoint for us as music fans, for us as drug people, for us as like outsiders. It was definitely, that was a time of our generation.
And then she gets accused of all this conspiratorial stuff. How painful was that? Like where people are like, everybody's coming out with theories about her doing, like organizing his death. Like when you're her best friend and you hear that stuff, does it disgust you or is it just like water off your back?
It's more water. I can't really even like consider like that stuff.
Right. It's a horror show.
Yeah.
When it's that
a little
close.
bit like, yeah, I don't know. Like even now, like I think like I've been posting stuff on my social stuff about the book coming out. And like, I'm not even talking about that chapter in my life. And kids are sort of hitting up my comment chains with like what's it called?
Conspiracy.
Yeah. Conspiracy theories about that. I was like, oh, wow.
It's gross. It is the gross, especially when it's that much grief.
I mean, people feel it. Like we said, it was like such a time in our generation. People are like, also like suicide just brings up like, it's hard to deal with. Like, and there's no answer. And everybody, when someone takes their life, wants resolve, and you want like an answer, like what happened? It's like this crazy mystery that plays out that you never get an answer to. And the answer is like, I mean, like we're saying over and over, yeah, it's just mental health. That's such an unsatisfying resolve to like, no, you want there to be like, there's a gun involved and there's like, I mean, it feels like sleuthy in some regards. Well, you want answers, but there aren't any.
And I think that happens with a lot of different kinds of death, not just suicide, with overdose, with murder, like with Charlie Kirk. Everyone is trying to figure out like what really happened. Or I mean, people are deciding that Bob Marley was executed by the CIA with cancer in his shoe. It's like, there's once somebody's gone.
Right.
And I think one of the things in the book that is the most powerful, and it probably is the most powerful, is towards the end where it's just making sense of death. Because you have these three deaths, your father, Kurt, and Cliff, all different circumstances.
Right.
Your father who dies of pancreatic cancer illness, Cliff who succumbs to relapse and overdose, and Kurt who sticks a shotgun in his mouth.
Right.
But the answer that you say in the book, and spoilers notwithstanding, and it's kind of the meaning of life, that the end of life exists for all of us. And you describe it as you were a jittery mess that you didn't know what was waiting around the corner.
Right.
And you are basically freshly sober.
Right.
And you're dealing with this cataclysmic loss. Like, were you in meetings? Who were you? How did you get through it?
At the time, for sure, like I was doing meetings a lot. And sort of just like reaching out to kind of that community. But at the same time, like, I mean, I can look back at it now and feel like I was pretty strong and felt confident and felt healed. But I wasn't. I was such a mess. It was so scary. Like when something happens like that, there's something to a suicide or death in that way that is, it's like a horror movie. It's so scary. There was a horror to it that I kind of felt like I lived with every day. I like every sort of like instance and turn of a corner was like, like, it was just like everything freaked me out. Everything was too close and too loud and scary. It was just like, I just felt super vulnerable and scared most of the time, which is probably a collective sort of feeling. That's where we all sort of go in the aftermath of that stuff. But I think it took such a long time to feel just any semblance of normal.
It's the idea that the life is not forever. As much as we can accept it rationally, like when your person is gone, it's like, what the fuck is happening? How is that possible?
For sure. That's the takeaway, I guess, that I'm not saying, that I'm not even realizing, that you're saying, that I'm kind of realizing is like, yeah, that's the big reveal is like, yeah, the answer is you're gonna die. I mean, straight up. Like, no shame, no weird feelings about it. I mean, it's weird, but like, yeah, that's the realization. You're gonna die.
Yeah, and who's the royal we?
That's a question. The royal we, I kind of felt like sort of like, I forget, the initial title was, Ways to Get High. For a long time, it was Ways to Get High. And then as the book became more about San Francisco and that chapter of sort of my life, I think I started to regard us as kids who moved to that specific geographic at the same time and lived in that era, like pre-internet, that weird window when we moved there. It was like this crazy entitled scope of the world that I say entitled because we just like happened onto this like funny little village in California where it was like magic. And we were just these special people who got to experience that together. So it became sort of like a notion of that. Like the book wasn't so much about me, but it was about us and how we happened into this sort of like kingdom of a weird periphery at that point. And in a lot of ways, it's entitled and royal. So that's what.
Well, I feel included in your royal we, even though I only spent a couple days in San Francisco. Because I feel like the royal we is all of us. The second you're reading that book, you're with you.
Oh, cool.
You're in that we, you know?
Right.
And then how long did you go to meetings for? Did you still go? Like,
I went to meetings for a good, I continued for a good, 10 years for sure. Sometimes I'll go to meetings still, like I act out in crazy ways. And sometimes I feel like it's only healthy to address it in that way. And in that way, I mean, through meetings. But yeah, I still go, but really sporadically go to meetings.
No relapse.
No relapse, but like, I don't know, and this is controversial, but at one point, like, I smoked pot.
Nice.
And so technically that was a relapse.
When did you smoke pot?
Probably like 10 years after I got sober.
You didn't stay with it though?
No.
You don't.
I mean, I don't smoke pot anymore, but like once in a while, and this is controversial, and all respect to people who are going through it, but I'm like, I don't know, 20 years in, and once in a while, like really rarely, I'll take a gummy.
Nice. How are the gummies?
They're fine. I don't go to a place of like sort of like problematic with it.
I think it's very important that people tell their story.
Yeah.
Like, and that, because we get into this fucking orthodox sobriety thing. And if somebody isn't orthodox in their sobriety, then they're not sober, then they're not in recovery, then they're not part of this royal we. And I'm finding, as I've done this show like almost 10 years this year, and I'm learning more and more and more that we need to include everybody under the tent. And if we don't, then they're fucking by themselves.
Right.
So it's like, I think it's very great for you to say, I smoked pot a few times, or I took gummies, and it was good for this, it wasn't good for that.
Right.
Like, why didn't you stick with it? Why did you not stay with it?
Stay with taking gummies?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I would be habitual in that way with that kind of like thing in the same way that I was with like opiates.
Do you feel like a real addict alcoholic? Because I feel like your story, what I'm getting from it, just sitting with you and reading the book, like you had a reaction to some real event in your life. Then you were in a society of cool drug addicts. And then you were like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't know. Like, I feel like you're free and clear.
I am an addict, though, for sure. To be clear, I am an addict. And I behave in ways that are absolutely addictive.
Me
like
too.
we were talking last night, like I was with my friend Dolly at a party and she was having a cigarette and she's like, have one.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, you don't get it. And I was like, straight up, like, I don't want one cigarette. I want to smoke the entire pack. Like,
I want to
right
never
now.
stop smoking.
Yeah, right now. I want to smoke the whole pack. I mean, that's crazy. And in lots of ways, I'm still that. I'm absolutely still that person. I'm still an addict. I remember like when I was in rehab and like talking to someone in rehab and I was like, why? I'm not an addict. Like if you administered heroin to a monkey, the monkey would get sick and need the heroin. Is that an addict? It's just like this equation that just happens. Like, that's not necessarily addictive behavior. And the person was like, yeah, but a monkey wouldn't like, stick a needle in their arm to feel different. I was like, oh, yeah.
That's probably true.
I guess you got me on that one. It's true. Like the lengths to which we go to sort of like, I went to sort of like make myself feel different was like, put a needle in my arm. That's not normal.
Did you like the age of shooting up when you got into it?
Of course.
It's so magical.
It's so crazy.
It's crazy.
It's so crazy.
It's so, and now everyone's shooting up Ozempic.
Oh yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
You know what really bothered me, and I'm just going to say this. I didn't know you were an Imperial Teen until like Margaret, and a million shout outs to Margaret Cho for getting you to come on the show.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. I didn't know Imperial Teen was your band until I started researching you.
Oh, wow.
And I loved Imperial Teen.
Oh, that's cool.
And the song that I loved the most was the song called Imperial Teen.
Oh, right.
And then I'm looking for it and I can't fucking find it anywhere.
Right.
And it's not on Spotify.
Right.
And it's not on Apple Music. And I'm starting to call my friends and I'm like, was it another band that did the song Imperial Teen and it's not Imperial Teen? Right. And today I found it.
Did you find it on like YouTube or something?
Yeah, I found it. I called my friend Brad and he's like, oh, that's on Seasick. And he just sent me the record.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, the first two records of Imperial Teen are not available on any of those platforms. I still don't understand why. I'm supposed to get to the bottom of that. This season is the season where I'm going to get to the bottom of that.
I'm very disappointed that you're not going to come do a song at DopeyCon. You should not go to that play and come to DopeyCon.
What play? I
don't know. I invited you to DopeyCon on Saturday and you said you have to be in some play or go to a play.
You did?
Yes. Were you just blowing me off because you didn't know how cool I was?
I honestly don't remember this invitation and this correspondence.
October 4th, which is a week from tomorrow.
Oh.
You're in some...
Oh, yeah. You're right. I'm going to a play. Well, also I have a show on the 5th. Like October 4th, we have practice. My band Crickets is playing on October 5th on the Sunday. And Saturday is the last time we can practice. And then the 4th, I'm going to go see that Aubrey Plaza play.
What time is that?
That's at like 7.
See, our show's at 5:30. You should come.
Where is Dope? I thought it was in
on
Las
this street.
Vegas.
No, it's on this street. It's in the church.
Really?
It's in the church on this street.
Oh my God. I'm going to come for sure then.
You have to come. And Katz's is catering it. And like Hank Azaria is going to be there. And it's going to be like Hank Azaria, the guy from The Simpsons.
Wow.
A lot of cool people. Do you know Brace Belden?
Who?
Brace Belden, genius podcaster.
No, I love her name. Is it a person?
Yes, it's a person. You have to come.
How do you say their name again?
Brace Belden.
That's a wild name.
Will you please come?
Brace?
Yes.
Yeah, I will come. I have Cricket's rehearsal and then that play.
You ready for the quick game before we're done?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm going to say one thing. You're going to choose between the two things.
Okay.
LA or San Francisco?
San Francisco.
Beatles or the Stones?
Beatles.
Robert Plant or Jimmy Page?
Robert Plant.
Because of your personal experience?
Yes.
He was cool with you?
Yeah, he was so
Sweetheart?
cool. Yeah.
Took you to gay bars?
Yeah, we went to a gay bar together.
Very nice.
I loved him.
Top or bottom?
Top.
Where'd you come up with bottom?
My name?
Yeah.
That's what I was born with. That's my name.
Amazing. Flea or Anthony?
Flea.
Frankenstein or Dracula?
Oh, wow. Good one, Frankenstein.
Patty Schemmel or Dave Grohl?
Patty Schemmel.
Kim Deal or Kelly Deal?
Oh, my God. No answer. Sorry.
Metallica or the Guns and the Roses?
Metallica.
Sasquatch or Bigfoot?
Sasquatch.
Kurt or Courtney?
Courtney.
San Francisco or New York?
New York.
Faith No More or Imperial Teen?
Imperial Teen today.
Dude, thank you so much for coming.
Hey, thank you, David.
Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was great. Thanks. It's intense to talk about.
Is it too much?
Sure. No, not at all. I think too much is good. Like leaning into too much is like very important.
You're a brilliant musician, and I love the book.
Thank you.
Thank you.